Her Excellency, Mrs. Maria Adiato Jallo Nandigna, Vice Premier Minister of Guinea-Bissau. Your Excellency, Mrs. Maria Adiato Jallo Nandigna, you have the floor.
Señor Presidente, Excelencias, señores jefes de Estado y del Gobierno, señoras y señores delegados, honorables asistentes. Permítanme, en
Your
nombre del
Excellency,
jefe de
distinguished
Estado del
delegates,
Gobierno de la República de Guinea-Bissau,
heads of state and
usar de
government,
palabra en esta conferencia, sin duda,
I should
la
like
más
to
importante en la historia
thank
del
you for
combate
taking the
contra el
floor on
cambio
this, the most
climático.
important conference, the history of the
Quiero en
fight against
primer
climate
lugar
change.
exprimir
And I'd
los
first of all like to
sentimientos de
convey
nuestra gratitud
our
a
feelings
la reina
of
de
thanks
Dinamarca, su
to
gobierno, por el
the
caluroso
Kingdom of Denmark and its
acogimiento
government for
reservado a
the
nuestra
warm
delegación
welcome
aquí en
extended
Copenhague.
to our delegation
Por
here
otro
in
lado,
Copenhagen.
me gustaría también,
I
a través de
would
ustedes,
also,
señor Primero Ministro,
through you,
felicitar
Mr.
al
Prime
gobierno
Minister,
y el
like
pueblo
to
de Dinamarca
congratulate the government
por
and people of
excelente
Denmark
organización
for
de
the
estos
excellent
trabajos
arrangements
de
made
los
for
esfuerzos
our work
realizados para
and
asegurar el
everything
suceso
done
del
to
COP15.
ensure the success of COP15.
Excelencias, señoras y
Your
señores,
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen,
ratificando el convenio marco de las
rectifying
Naciones
the
Unidas sobre
UN
el cambio
Framework
climático
Convention on
y
Climate
el
Change and the
Protocolo de
Kyoto
Kioto,
Protocol,
Guinea-Bissau pretende participar
Guinea-Bissau
voluntariamente
is
en el
aspiring to
esfuerzo
participate
mundial del
willingly
combate al
in the
cambio
global
climático.
effort to combat climate change.
Desde entrada en vigor del convenio
Since
y
the
del
entry
Protocolo de
into
Kioto,
force of the
los
Convention and the
esfuerzos
Kyoto
de la
Protocol,
reducción del gas
the efforts
con efecto
to
invernadero
cut
no
greenhouse
han sido
gases
proporcionales a los compromisos
has
asumidos.
not lived up to the
Actualmente,
commitments given.
estamos en una
We are
situación de
currently in a
emergencia
state of emergency
donde no podemos
where
escoger.
we
La
cannot
llamada de
be
atención
choosers.
de los científicos
The,
es clara.
the appeal
La
for attention
cuestión
by
no es de
scientists is
saber
clear.
si es
It isn't a
necesario
question of whether
actuar,
it is necessary
mas
to act,
cuándo vamos
rather
todos,
when
en fin,
we are all
decidir de
going
actuar.
to finally decide
Excelencias,
to
señoras
act.
y señores,
Your Excellency, ladies and
hoy
gentlemen,
el mundo espera con toda la ansiedad
the
que
world
los países
is anxiously
industrializados
awaiting the industrialized countries to legally bind themselves to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases. Mankind is also awaiting the immediate implementation of the Bali Plan of Action in a framework separate from that of the Kyoto Protocol, considering as legitimate needs those of cutting poverty in underdeveloped countries. In this respect, financial resources, new and additional, predictable and easily accessible, must be made available, as well as technology, transfers of technology, and a strengthening of the human and institutional capacity of our countries, which are most vulnerable, least developed, as well as the small island states, in order to make possible our adaptation to the negative impact of climate change, and so that we can become true actors in the battle. Guinea-Bissau is a country in West Africa located in the intertropical zone with considerable exposure to sunlight, infrared and ultraviolet rays. It's also a Sahelian land, a coastal island state with approximately 80 islands and islets, fragile ecosystems, as well as structural problems associated with economic vulnerability, above all tied to energy dependency and food and shortage of food supplies. These are the major challenges for our country. Given this vulnerability, we can flag some of the following ecological and environmental characteristics. Our coastal zone is low-lying, and the floodplains are exposed to sea rise due to the thermal expansion of the oceans, and this could jeopardize or expose our country to flooding, coastal erosion, with the disappearance of our fine white sandy beaches, loss of vegetation, infrastructure, roads, hotels, schools, houses, in whole cities indeed, as well as major biodiversity, which is so much a factor for our economy. Regularly, we observe or phenomena which are not typical of the tropics, like salinization of lands, together with saline seepage, the disappearance of species, and so on. Agriculture, the basis of our economy, is essentially traditional in its nature, linked to rainfall, the irregularity of which has become marked and associated with rising temperatures. Thus, we see a drop in agricultural output, deterioration of our soils due to intensification of the process of evapotranspiration. The government of Guinea-Bissau is concerned at the negative trends and the harm from climate change and the concern about the implementation of the Framework Convention has basic instruments to prepare the country for adaptation. We might mention national reports in this respect, such as the initial national communication, the National Plan of Action for Adaptation to Climate Change, and the second national communication. The protected areas of the country are approximately 12% of national territory, and we hope that by 2015 these will extend to more than 20% of our territory. We might say that our country is a forest region, and that communities living on the resources of the forests depend on the sustainable management of our forest resources. The country has the baseline for this sector, permitting access to the flexibility mechanisms under Kyoto, the clean development mechanism and post-Kyoto, as well as RED. Guinea-Bissau is a sanctuary for biodiversity in our entire environmental region. We reaffirm our deep disagreement with any attempt, therefore, to dismantle the Kyoto Protocol, which must be retained as the legal basis for the fight against greenhouse gases. The principle of common differentiated responsibilities is the basis for any strengthening of cooperation between the parties, and to follow the path of sustainable development and to secure a harmony between mankind and nature. It's very important that the new approach to climate change provides the solution which can enhance the capacity to adapt and mitigate such impacts, particularly in least developed countries such as Guinea-Bissau, the risks of which may otherwise fall so hard on our shoulders. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our government is resolved to continue and further strengthen its environmental policy with respect to climate change. Its National Plan of Action and the Millennium Development Goals, and to continue its fight against poverty. All the efforts carried out and drawing on everyone, donors, underdeveloped countries and developed nations, will, however, come to naught if the greenhouse gas emissions are not controlled and there is not a a holding of climate change to a scientifically sustainable level. We firmly support the African platform to improve our future. And finally, we sincerely hope that the objectives of this conference, which is so linked to the hopes of mankind, will indeed prove beneficial to future generations. Thank you.